breaking free from codependency and toxic relationships, healing narcissistic abuse, overcoming people-pleasing, setting boundaries, and rediscovering self-love by Samantha Holt. Introduction. Paula Olquist stared at the glass lamp on the table. The flame inside the glass was shrinking. The room grew darker, the shadows on the wall stretching out like long, thin fingers. Her heart hammered against her ribs. She knew what she saw. The light was definitely lower than it was a minute ago. "Gregory," she called out, her voice shaking. Her husband walked into the room, looking calm and handsome. He smiled at her, but his eyes were cold. "Yes, my dear?" he asked. "The lights," Paula whispered, pointing a trembling finger at the lamp. "They are going down again, I can hardly see." Gregory didn't even look at the lamp. He looked directly at Paula with a look of pity. "The lights are fine, Paula. They haven't changed at all. You are imagining things again. I'm starting to get worried about your mind." Paula felt a cold chill wash over her. She looked at the lamp, then she looked at her husband. He seemed so sure. He loved her, didn't he? Why would he lie? Maybe she was losing it. Maybe her eyes were playing tricks on her. She sat back in her chair, feeling small and confused. She decided to trust his words over her own eyes. This scene from the 1944 movie Gaslight gave us the word we use today for this kind of cruelty. It is a slow, quiet way to break someone's spirit. It starts with a small lie. It ends with you standing in a dark room, wondering if the sun is actually shining outside. You might be holding this book because you feel exactly like Paula. You are living in a world where the lights keep dimming, but the person you love tells you everything is fine. You feel like you are walking through a thick gray fog. You find yourself checking your phone 100 times a day, waiting for a text that makes you feel okay again. You say sorry, even when you didn't do anything wrong. You have become an expert at reading other people's moods, but you have no idea what you actually feel yourself. The person in the mirror, think about the last time you looked in a mirror. Not just to brush your teeth, but to really look at yourself. Do you recognize the person staring back? For many people trapped in toxic cycles, the answer is no. You have spent so much time trying to be what someone else wants that your own face has started to fade. You have become a hollow mirror. When you are a hollow mirror, you don't have your own shape. You just reflect whatever is in front of you. If the person you are with is angry, you feel like a bad person who needs to fix it. If they are happy, you finally feel like you can breathe. Your entire life depends on their weather. If they are a storm, you are drowning. If they are a sun, you are blooming. But you are never just you. This is the core of codependency. It is the belief that you are only safe or worthy if you are making someone else happy. It is a full-time job that pays nothing and costs you everything. It leaves you exhausted, lonely, and empty. You are so busy being a caregiver or a fixer that you have forgotten how to just exist. You might wonder how you got here. You weren't born this way. Nobody enters the world wanting to be a doormat. Usually, this way of living started as a way to stay safe. Maybe you grew up in a house where you had to be very quiet to avoid an explosion. Maybe you learned that love was something you had to earn by being perfect. You built a shield out of kindness, and now that shield is so heavy you can't put it down. The echo of someone else there is an old story from a long time ago about a woman named Echo. She was a talkative girl who loved to chat, but one day she was cursed. She lost her ability to speak her own words. She could only repeat the last few words that someone else said to her. Echo fell in love with a man named Narcissus. He was very beautiful, but he was also very selfish. He didn't care about anyone but himself. Echo followed him through the woods, desperately wanting to tell him she loved him. But she couldn't. She could only wait for him to speak. When Narcissus shouted, "Is anyone here?" Echo could only shout back, "Here." When he said, "I want to be alone," she could only say, "Alone." Eventually, Narcissus became so obsessed with his own reflection in a pool of water that he stayed there until he died. And Echo. She faded away until there was nothing left of her but her voice, repeating the words of others in the wind. This story is thousands of years old, but it describes your life today. You are the echo. You are repeating the needs, the wants, and the rules of the Narcissus in your life. You have disappeared into their shadow. You are waiting for them to say the right words so you can feel alive, but they are too busy looking at themselves to ever truly see you. The boiling frog, why don't you just leave? Why is it so hard to set a boundary and stick to it? If you put a frog in a pot of boiling water, it will jump out immediately. It knows it is in danger. But if you put that same frog in a pot of cool, comfortable water and turn the heat up very, very slowly, the frog stays. It adjusts its body temperature to the water. It thinks, "This is a bit warm, but I'm okay." It keeps adjusting and adjusting until the water is boiling, and by then, the frog is too tired to jump. Toxic relationships are exactly like that pot of water. It didn't start with screaming or gaslighting. It started with love bombing. It started with someone telling you that you were the most amazing person they had ever met. They sent you 50 texts a day. They wanted to spend every second with you. It felt like a fairy tale. Then, the heat went up 1 degree. Maybe they made a joke about your weight. Maybe they got angry when you went out with your friends. You adjusted. You thought they're just having a bad day, or they just love me so much they're protective. Then it went up another degree, and another. Now you are sitting in boiling water. You are miserable, but you are also used to it. You have forgotten what cool water feels like. You are so busy trying to survive the heat that you don't even realize you have the power to jump. A promise of freedom. This book is your permission to jump. Right now, you feel like a hollow mirror, but by the time you reach the last page, you will be a self-governing lighthouse. A lighthouse doesn't move. It doesn't run all over the ocean trying to save every boat. It doesn't change its light because a ship is angry at it. It just stands on the rock and shines. It has a solid core. It knows exactly where it is. It sets a boundary. This is the land, and that is the sea, and it keeps itself bright. You are going to learn how to clear the mental fog. You will finally understand the difference between the truth and the lies you've been told. Set unshakable boundaries. You will learn how to say no without feeling like the world is ending. Find your true self. You will dig up the hobbies, the dreams, and the personality that were buried under years of people-pleasing. Break the trauma bond. You will learn why your brain craves the very person who hurts you and how to rewire that habit. This isn't just a book of nice ideas. It is a map. We are going to look at real history and real science. We will see how people like Eleanor Roosevelt went from being a shy, scared girl to a woman who changed the world. We will look at how the brain works so you can stop blaming yourself for being weak. You aren't weak. You are just operating on an old, broken blueprint. We are going to draw a new one. Meet Alina. To understand how this looks in real life, we need to look at Alina Rodriguez. Alina is 34 years old and lives in a small, pretty apartment in Chicago. She is a graphic designer, and she is very good at her job. If you saw her at a coffee shop, you would think she has it all together. She wears nice clothes and always has a kind smile for everyone. But inside, Alina is falling apart. It is 11:00 p.m. on a Tuesday. Alina is sitting on her sofa, staring at her phone. The screen is glowing blue in her dark living room. She has a text from Marcus. Marcus is her ex-boyfriend. They broke up 3 months ago, but he won't go away. The text says, "Just checking in. I saw a painting today that reminded me of you. Hope you aren't still mad about everything. I miss my best friend." Alina's heart starts to race. Her stomach feels like it is being tied in a knot. She spent 4 years with Marcus. 4 years of him telling her she was too sensitive. 4 years of him forgetting her birthday and then getting mad at her for being upset about it. She knows she shouldn't reply. Her therapist told her to go no contact. But the fawn response in her brain is screaming, "If I don't reply, he will think I'm mean. If I'm mean, I'm a bad person. Maybe he really has changed. Maybe I was too hard on him." She starts typing, "Hi Marcus. That's nice of you to say. I'm not mad." She deletes it. She types again, "Please stop texting me. I need space." Her hand shakes. "That feels too mean." She deletes it. She spends 3 hours, 3 whole hours, trying to write a 3-word response. She is trying to find the perfect combination of words that will keep him happy but also keep her safe. She is trying to be a mirror for him, even though he isn't even in the room. Finally, she sends, "Thanks, hope you're well." The second she hits send, she feels a wave of shame. She just gave him an opening. She just told him that her boundaries aren't real. She looks in her bathroom mirror and sees a woman who looks 10 years older than 34. Her eyes are tired. She doesn't know who she is without someone else telling her. Alina is a hollow mirror. She is stuck in the storm. But Alina is also the hero of this story, because she is about to start the work of finding herself. We are going to follow her as she learns to put her phone down, stand up to her boss, and finally stop saying sorry for existing. The roadmap ahead, we are going to take this journey one step at a time. First, we will look at the storm. We will explore why we stay in relationships that hurt us. We will talk about a man named B.F. Skinner and his pigeons to understand why random bits of love are more addictive than a steady stream of it. You will learn that you aren't stupid for staying. You are actually dealing with a chemical addiction in your brain. Next, we will look at the playbook. We will dive into the mind of the manipulator. We will look at history, from the Russian monk Rasputin to modern-day cult leaders, to see exactly how the trap is set. Once you see the patterns, you can't unsee them. The fog will start to lift. Then, we will build your fortress. We will learn about the 5 pillars of emotional autonomy. This is where we stop looking at the other person and start looking at you. We will use the life of Eleanor Roosevelt to show how you can set boundaries that people actually respect. You will learn that a boundary isn't a wall to keep people out, it's a gate to let the right ones in. Finally, we will focus on the return to self. This is the best part. This is where you remember that you liked to paint, or hike, or dance before the mirror cracked. We will look at the work of Viktor Frankl, who survived the worst places on Earth and still found meaning. You will learn that even if you feel broken, you can be like kintsugi, the Japanese art where broken pottery is fixed with gold, making it stronger and more beautiful than it was before. Why trust this path? You might have tried to fix yourself before. You might have read books or watched videos, only to find yourself back in the same old habits a week later. The reason most people fail is that they try to change their behavior without changing their internal compass. They try to say no, but their brain still thinks no equals death. This book is different because it focuses on rewiring. We aren't just going to talk about feelings, we are going to look at how your nerves and your habits actually work. We are going to use evidence logs and reality journals to prove to your brain that you are safe. We are going to use the stories of people who have been exactly where you are and came out the other side. You are not a science project. You are a person who has been through a lot, and you deserve a life that feels like yours. You don't need to be perfect to start this. You don't even need to be strong. You just need to be tired. If you are tired of the fog, tired of the guilt, and tired of the dimming lights, then you are ready. Imagine a life where you wake up and the first thing you think is, what does she need? But how do I feel? Imagine being able to see a text from a toxic person and feeling nothing. No racing heart, no panic, just a calm sense of I don't have time for this. Imagine walking into a room and not scanning the faces to see if everyone is happy with you. Imagine just walking in and being yourself, knowing that if some people do like it, that is their problem, not yours. That life isn't a fairy tale. It is a set of skills, and you are about to learn them. Let's begin. Chapter 1: Why We Stay in the Storm. Variable ratio schedule of reinforcement produces the highest resistance to extinction. B.F. Skinner sat in his lab at Harvard University in the 1950s, watching a pigeon. The bird was inside a small, plain box. There wasn't much for the pigeon to do except stare at a small plastic disc on the wall. If the bird pecked the disc, a tiny door would open, and a piece of grain would fall out. At first, Skinner set it up so the bird got a treat every single time it pecked the disc. The pigeon learned the trick fast. It would peck, eat, and then go about its day. When it was full, it stopped pecking. It was calm. It knew exactly how the world worked. But then Skinner changed the rules. He adjusted the machine so the grain didn't come out every time. Sometimes the bird would peck and get nothing. It would peck again. Nothing. It might peck 10 times in a row and get 10 treats, or it might peck 50 times and get only one. The rewards became random. They became a surprise. The change in the bird was immediate and strange. It didn't give up. It didn't fly to the corner of the box and wait. Instead, it became obsessed. The pigeon began to peck the disc like a frantic gambler at a slot machine. It wouldn't stop. It would peck thousands of times an hour, ignoring everything else. Even when the bird was clearly tired, it kept hitting that plastic disc, hoping the next time would be the big win. Skinner had discovered something powerful and a little bit scary about how brains work. He found out that if you give someone a reward every time they do something, they eventually get bored. But if you give them a reward only sometimes, they will work themselves to death trying to get it again. This is the storm of a toxic relationship. You are the bird in the box, and the person you love is holding the grain. You stay because, every once in a while, they are kind. They give you a pellet of affection, a crumb of hope, or a tiny compliment. Because you don't know when the next one is coming, your brain becomes addicted to the chase. You aren't staying because the relationship is good. You are staying because you are waiting for the machine to give you one more piece of grain. Bank Vault and the Bond. In August of 1973, a man named Jan-Erik Olsson walked into a bank in Stockholm, Sweden. He had a submachine gun and took 4 bank employees hostage. For 6 days, these 4 people were trapped inside a massive, cold concrete vault. They were scared for their lives. The world watched on the news, waiting for a violent end. But when the police finally broke in to save them, something happened that shocked the world. The hostages didn't run toward the police. Instead, they ran toward their captors. They stood in front of the gunmen to protect them from the police's bullets. Later, they even refused to testify against the men in court. They had started to view the people who threatened them as their only source of safety. This became known as Stockholm Syndrome. It happens when a person is in a situation where they feel they cannot escape and their life depends on someone else. In that dark vault, the hostages didn't see the gunman as a monster. They saw him as the person who allowed them to live. If he gave them a glass of water, they felt a deep sense of gratitude. If he let them move their legs, they felt he was kind. In a toxic relationship, your vault is the emotional environment you live in. When someone makes you feel small, scared, or unloved most of the time, your brain starts to look for any sign of mercy. When that person finally stops yelling or gives you a hug, your body feels a massive rush of relief. You start to think, see, they really do love me. They are being so nice right now. You forget that they were the ones who put you in the vault in the first place. This is called a trauma bond. It is a knot that ties you to a person through a cycle of pain and relief. The harder they pull, the tighter the knot gets. The girl in the glass office, Alina Rodriguez, sat in the break room of her Chicago marketing firm, staring at the coffee machine. Her heart was still thumping against her ribs. 10 minutes ago, her boss, Sarah, had walked past her desk and said, "That layout you did for the shoe brand? It's actually decent. Keep it up." It was the first nice thing Sarah had said in 3 weeks. For the past 20 days, Sarah had been cold. She had ignored Alina's emails. She had sighed loudly during meetings whenever Alina spoke. Alina had spent those weeks staying late, skipping lunch, and checking her work 10 times over. She felt like she was walking on eggshells, trying to figure out what she had done wrong. Now, because of those 2 words, actually decent, Alina felt like she was floating. She felt a warm glow in her chest. She found herself thinking, maybe I was just being too sensitive. Sarah is a great mentor. I just need to work harder to keep her happy. Alina didn't realize she was the pigeon in Skinner's box. She had been pecking at the work harder disc for weeks with no reward. Now that Sarah had dropped a tiny grain of praise, Alina was ready to peck 10,000 more times. She looked at her reflection in the glass wall of the break room. She looked tired. There were dark circles under her eyes, and her hair was pulled back in a messy knot. She realized she didn't even know who she was anymore without Sarah's approval. She was like a mirror that had been dropped and glued back together. She only felt whole when she saw a positive reflection of herself in her boss's eyes. Without that reflection, she felt like a pile of broken pieces. This is the cracked mirror effect. When you are in a toxic cycle, you stop looking at yourself to see how you are doing. Instead, you look at the other person to see who they say you are. If they are happy, you are good. If they are angry, you are bad. Your own sense of self disappears. You become a shadow of the person you used to be, waiting for someone else to turn on the light. Living through others, Anna Freud, the daughter of the famous Sigmund Freud, spent her life studying how children protect themselves from emotional pain. She noticed something very specific in kids who grew up in homes where they didn't feel safe or heard. She called it altruistic surrender. That sounds like a big, fancy phrase, but it's actually quite simple. It means giving up yourself to live through someone else. Anna saw that when a child feels like their own needs don't matter to their parents, they stop having their own needs. They become experts at figuring out what the parent wants. They become the perfect little helper. They become quiet when the parent is stressed. They excel at school to make the parent look good. They learn a very dangerous lesson. If I can make this person happy, then I will be safe. The problem is that this habit doesn't go away when the child grows up. It follows them into their adult lives. They find partners who are loud, demanding, or selfish. They feel at home in these relationships because they already know how to do the job. They know how to disappear. They know how to surrender their own desires to keep the peace. Anna Freud herself lived in the shadow of her famous father for a long time. She worked for him, cared for him, and carried on his ideas. It took her many years to realize that she had her own voice and her own ideas that were separate from his. She had to learn that she didn't have to surrender her life to be worthy of love. The chemistry of the cycle, why is it so hard to just walk away? If you were standing in a room and someone started throwing rocks at you, you would leave. But in a toxic relationship, the rocks are mixed with roses. Your brain is a chemistry lab. When things are going and the person becomes mean or distant, your brain produces cortisol. This is the stress chemical. It makes you feel shaky, anxious, and alert. You are in survival mode. The trap happens because of how these two chemicals interact. When you are drowning in the bad cortisol, and then the person suddenly gives you a good dopamine hit, a hug, an apology, a nice text, the relief is so powerful that it creates a physical addiction. Your brain learns that the only way to stop the pain of the stress is to get a fix from the person who caused the pain. It's exactly like a person who is addicted to gambling. They lose and lose and lose, which feels terrible. But the possibility of a win keeps them at the table. The win feels so much better because it comes after so much loss. This is why people often say they feel bored in healthy relationships. A healthy person is consistent. They are a steady reward pigeon box. There isn't a massive spike of stress followed by a massive spike of relief. It's just calm. For someone who is used to the storm, calm can feel like something is wrong. They are waiting for the lightning to strike because that's the only time they feel the rush of the rain. Identifying the patterns to get out of the storm, you first have to realize that you are in it. You have to stop looking at the clouds and start looking at your own feet. There are three main roles people play in these toxic cycles. Think of it as a drama triangle. The victim, this person feels like they have no power. They feel like things are always happening to them. They say things like, "I can't believe they did this to me again," but they don't see a way out. The rescuer, this is the person who is always trying to fix the other person. They think, if I just love them enough, they will change. They spend all their energy trying to keep the other person happy so the storm won't happen. The persecutor, this is the person who uses blame, anger, or silence to control the others. They are the ones holding the grain in the Skinner box. Most people in codependent relationships jump back and forth between being the rescuer and the victim. 1 minute, you are trying to help your partner find a job or stop drinking, rescuer. The next minute, you are crying because they yelled at you after you did all that work, victim. The common thread in all of this is that your attention is always on the other person. You are watching their face, their phone, and their mood. You have become a world-class detective in someone else's life, while your own life is gathered in a heap on the floor. The first step toward the shore. Imagine you are in the middle of a dark, swirling ocean. The waves are crashing over your head. You are exhausted from swimming. You see a boat nearby, but every time you reach for it, the person on the boat pushes you back into the water. Then, a few minutes later, they throw you a life vest. You put it on and feel grateful. Then they take it back. You have been doing this for a long time. You are so tired that you have forgotten that you are actually a very strong swimmer. You have forgotten that the shore is only a mile away. You stay near the boat because you are afraid that if you leave it, you will sink. You think the boat is your only hope, even though the boat is the thing that keeps putting you in danger. The first step toward freedom isn't fixing the person on the boat. It isn't even fixing the boat. The first step is realizing that you don't need the boat to stay afloat. You have to stop waiting for the person to throw you a life vest. You have to look away from the boat and toward the horizon. You have to decide that being alone in the water, moving toward the shore, is better than being near a boat that is trying to drown you. This is a scary realization. It means you have to give up the maybe. You have to give up the hope that the machine will give you one more piece of grain. You have to accept that the pellets of kindness aren't worth the shocks of pain. A new map as we move forward, we are going to look at how to stop being the pigeon. We are going to look at the playbook that people use to set these traps. We are going to learn how to rewire your brain so that peace feels better than drama. You might feel like you have lost the person you used to be. You might feel like that cracked mirror is all you have left. But here is a secret. The pieces are all still there. They are just waiting for you to pick them up and put them back together in a new way. You aren't going to go back to being the person you were before the relationship. That person didn't know how to spot a Skinner box. You are going to become someone new, someone who can see the storm coming and choose to stay on the dry land. Think about what it would feel like to wake up in the morning and not check your phone with a racing heart. Imagine what it would feel like to have an opinion and not worry if it makes someone else angry. Imagine feeling whole just because you exist, not because someone else gave you a compliment. This isn't just a dream. It is a physical possibility. Your brain is amazing. It can grow new paths. It can learn to love the calm. It can learn to trust itself again. The storm is loud, but it is not permanent. The clouds are thick, but the sun is still behind them. You have been a hollow mirror for a long time, letting others decide what you see. It is time to stop being a mirror and start being a light. A light doesn't need a reflection to know it is shining. It just shines because that is what it was made to do. You were made for more than just surviving the storm. You were made to walk through it and come out the other side, stronger and more certain of your own heart than you have ever been. The door to the box is actually unlocked. You don't have to peck the disc anymore. You can just turn around and fly away. It will be the hardest thing you ever do, but it will also be the last time you ever have to ask for permission to be free. Chapter 2: The Narcissist's Playbook. How T. If you walk through the halls of the Winter Palace in St. Petersburg today, you will see a world of gold and mirrors. Huge crystal lights hang from the ceilings. The floors are made of precious wood. It is a place that feels steady, grand, and safe. Tourists speak in whispers as they look at the art. It is a museum of a dead empire, frozen in time. But in 1905, this palace did not feel safe. It felt like a cage built of fear. Inside, Empress Alexandra Fedorovna was a woman falling apart. She was the most powerful woman in Russia, yet she felt completely helpless. Her young son, Alexei, had a blood disease called hemophilia. Back then, a simple bruise could mean a slow, painful death. The doctors had no answers. The nights were filled with the sound of a child's crying and a mother's prayers. Alexandra was exhausted. She was lonely. She felt like no one in the royal court truly cared about her pain. She was the perfect target for a savior. Then, a man named Grigory Rasputin walked through the palace doors. He wasn't a doctor or a prince. He was a rough, unwashed monk from the countryside with eyes that seemed to see right through people. He didn't offer medicine. He offered something much more addictive. He offered her the feeling that she was special, chosen, and finally understood. This was the beginning of a trap. It is the same trap that many people fall into today. We often think that a bad person is easy to spot. We think they will show up looking like a villain in a movie. But the truth is much scarier. Most toxic relationships don't start with a blow, they start with a hug. They don't start with a lie, they start with a soulmate. The myth of the clear villain. There is a common idea that we should be able to see a bad person coming from a mile away. We tell ourselves that only weak or stupid people get tricked. This is a myth. In fact, people who are very kind, very smart, and very caring are often the ones who get caught in the trap. The myth says that a narcissist is someone who just loves themselves too much. We imagine someone staring in a mirror all day, but real narcissism is much more dangerous. It is a deep, empty hole inside a person that they try to fill by controlling others. To do this, they use a playbook, a set of moves that work almost every time because they tap into our deepest human needs. When Rasputin met Alexandra, he didn't start by being mean. He started with what we now call love bombing. He told her she was the most holy woman in Russia. He told her that only her faith and his help could save her son. He showered her with spiritual praise. He made her feel like they were the only two people in the world who truly understood the truth. Alexandra's internal compass began to spin. Usually, her needle pointed toward her family, her duties, and her own common sense. But Rasputin's intensity was like a giant magnet. He moved so close and spoke so loudly that her needle stopped pointing north. It started pointing only at him. Elena's flashback. The first 30 days in a small apartment in Chicago, many years after the Russian Empire fell, Elena Rodriguez sat on her floor. She was looking at an old photo of herself and Marcus from their first month together. In the photo, she is glowing. Her eyes are wide, and she looks like she has just won the lottery. She remembered those first 30 days. Marcus didn't just date her. He invaded her life with flowers, poems, and constant attention. He sent 50 texts a day. He told her he had never met anyone who got him the way she did. He called her his twin flame. At the time, it felt like a movie. She felt like she was finally being seen for who she really was. But looking back now, she realized her internal compass had been spinning just like Alexandra's. The speed of the relationship was a warning sign she didn't know how to read. Marcus had used the first stage of the playbook, idealization. This is when the person puts you on a high pedestal. They treat you like you are perfect. They learn your favorite songs, your deepest fears, and your biggest dreams. They don't do this to know you. They do it to build a mirror of you. They reflect back everything you want to see in yourself. Elena remembered the first time that mirror cracked. They were getting ready for a dinner party. She had spent an hour on her hair and was wearing a dress she loved. Marcus looked at her, stayed silent for a long time, and then said, "You're wearing that? I thought you had better taste. But it's okay, I'll love you anyway." It was a tiny comment, a micro-insult. It was the start of the second stage, devaluation. The shift, from angel to burden in the playbook, the shift from being perfect to being flawed is very purposeful. Once the narcissist knows you are hooked on their praise, they start to take it away. They do this slowly, like a person turning down a light switch so slowly you don't notice the room.